We're not going to have days off because we don't have enough days in the year. We have too many celebrations already.
So the guy who spent 40 days out of his first 100 golfing on taxpayer money is telling us that we get too many days off? Got it.
Do you see that? America is lined up with North Korea.
Yeah, we see that. That video is about how much paid time off people are guaranteed in other countries compared to the US. I live in a country that guarantees 28 paid days a year as the minimum, which is one of the lowest in Europe, as isn't even in the top 80 worldwide. And that's the same whether you are a manager or someone on minimum wage. You can negotiate more, but that is the legal minimum. If you work part-time, you get a proportional amount compared to your full-time hours. It is shocking to the rest of the developed world how much contempt US employers are allowed to have for their employees. The US federal minimum wage hasn't changed since people that are now in their 30s were children, even though most other countries will peg that to inflation each year. Now, the fact that paid maternity leave, which is just considered a basic standard of human decency nowadays, is available to everybody in every other developed country is just shocking to many Americans when they find that out. The lack of workers' protections, meaning that so many people in right to work states live in constant fear that they will just get fired at whim, certainly doesn't seem like Americans have the freedoms and human rights of people that don't live in fear like that in other countries. But let's just remember that in November, if the Republicans take the House, then there's none of that's going to get any better. If the Democrats are able to hold the House, it won't get any worse. If the Democrats are able to gain seats in the House and the Senate, then maybe it might get some way to the Americans getting some of those freedoms. But it will mean they need to have enough of a majority in the Senate to not have the likes of Sinema and Manchin hold the entirety of the American workforce to ransom. So yeah, there is some hope, but it involves, unfortunately, the Democrats. But really it involves a complete overhaul of the electoral system. This distinguished gentleman thinks it's perfectly acceptable for full-time American workers to average just 10 paid days off a year after 1 year of employment, even though 30 paid days off a year is the developed world norm. Now, the unemployment rate in the US is currently 3.7%. That's it. Where is the tipping point where American workers will have the leverage to get those norms? Is it 3%? If it drops to 2%, will suddenly American employers not be able to use the threshold of 30 hours to keep employees under that threshold so they don't have to provide them with healthcare and other benefits that are just considered human rights in modern democracies? Because what this commentator is saying is that the average American is terrible at negotiating, whereas this is what I think. I think that the unlimited bribery of elected officials by corporate donors and the threat by those donors that they could shift that bribe money to their political opponent if they don't do what they're told means that most US politicians are scared to fight for the average American because it will likely cost them their own job. But what do I know? But lastly, the fact that you ended this comment by saying that it's not the taxpayer's job to pay you to have more paid time off shows just how successful that bribe money is at convincing some Americans to believe that exploitation is normal. Because it stops them from even considering the fact that what's normal in other countries is for employers to be forced to adhere to minimum standards of workers' rights. It's not the government paying workers, it's simply the government enforcing minimum standards of workers' rights.
We need to talk about Derek. He took all of his 5 paid days off in one go this year. And then when I called him on Thursday and told him we needed him to come in, he just refused and said he had booked the week off months ago. He's clearly not a team player. Hey, we need to talk about Derek. He's only taken 5 days off this year so far. And he carried over 5 days from last year. So he's still got 27 paid leave days to take between now and the end of June at the cutoff. So I've asked him repeatedly to book more time off because it's just not healthy for him to not have a break for 6 months. Plus, there's 5 paid public holidays between now and the end of June. So even if he carries over 5 days into next year, he's still going to have 27 days off between, over the next 4 months. Yeah, and other people in his team have got most of their holidays booked. So he's really going to struggle to fit time off when someone can cover for him. But yeah, he needs to take more time off to be a team player.
The United States is the only advanced economy that does not guarantee paid time off.
We have no federal law saying that you have to provide a certain number of vacation days. And you have entire cultures like, France is a good example where pretty much everybody takes August off and it's just part of the culture. You don't really see that here in the United States.
Even though a majority of Americans do have some kind of paid time off, a little less than half actually take all of their available vacation time.
There's a certain fear. We don't have any legal protections, and so people have been fired for taking vacation time.
I'm a workaholic by my very nature, right? One of the things that I used to struggle with early on in my career was I didn't want to leave because I was afraid that people would think I wasn't needed.
Europe has taken a different policy approach to paid vacation time than the US.
In the European Union, the floor is 20 days of paid vacation. That's on top of other sorts of paid leave, like paid sick leave, paid new parent leave, that sort of thing. And here we have basically nothing.
France provides a minimum of 30 paid vacation days per year. There are also many European countries that have paid holidays, which pushes them past France for most paid days off total. The reason EU workers have these vacation benefits is regulation. The European Union Working Time Directive, which was passed in the early 1990s, requires at least 20 working days of paid vacation in all EU countries. France has gone as far as implementing right to disconnect laws, which regulate after-hour contact between employers and workers in an attempt to protect workers' right to rest.
I think the reason why French people take their vacations is because there are really, really strong workers' rights and workers' protections through contracts that are set in stone.
France prioritizes leisure time so much that the country established a public agency called the National Agency for Holiday Vouchers, which helps people who may not have the funds to go on vacation.
Everyone knows France is, on vacation in August. Businesses close for a couple weeks. I'm talking about your local boulangerie, some restaurants, some stores. It really does range. Some offices even say, okay, we're closed for, a week or two. So our employees must take their vacation at this time as well. I do not think the fact that these businesses or stores close actually affects the quality of life. At the end of the day, in France, it's really about this idea of working to live, not living to work.
The U.S. is quite unique. We have no federal law saying that you have to provide a certain number of vacation days. We have no state laws that say you have to provide a certain number of vacation days to your employees.
Even if the U.S. did mandate paid vacation time, cultural attitudes may prevent people from actually using it. 46% of U.S. workers say they don't use all of their time off. Nearly half of those employees worry they might fall behind on their work if they take time off, with nearly 20% thinking it could hurt their career growth and 16% saying they fear losing their job. And more than 40% of workers say they feel badly about their colleagues taking on their workload if they were to take time off.
I think in the U.S., there's this idea that you have to basically fight for your job. Even if you've been in that job for 5-10 years, you're constantly fighting for your place. You're constantly fighting for your right to stay there.
Some Americans also can't afford to take a trip. 56% of U.S. adults said they didn't think they could afford to take vacation last year because of inflation.